So, of course, at the last minute, I decided this year I was going to participate because, hi, it's from the perspective of a writer. So, you know, there's kind of an air of I cannot say that word, pretentiousness to it because of that. I was reading One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I finished this one. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. Where are my thoughts on this? Hey everybody, my name is Kelsey and we're about to get very, very dirty with Becca's Spookoplathon. So, many of you probably know of this readathon. It's hosted by Becca from Becca and the Books. I'll leave everything linked down below, of course, where she created a readathon based on her TBR game, Bookopoly, which is based on Monopoly. And for the last couple of years, I want to say, they've been specifically like the Spookoplathon, which is like the fall versions, fall vibes. So all the stuff that's on the board is like related to mysteries, thrillers, horrors, or just like spooky themes so that you can like read books that are in the fall vibe. So, of course, at the last minute, I decided this year I was going to participate because, hi. So I did do my very first roll actually in my TBR video. So if you haven't missed that or if you need a reminder, I'll just plop it in here real quick so you guys can see what I got. Let's see if I can do this. I pulled everything up on my iPod. So I found a die online because I could not be bothered to go downstairs and find actual 6-sided die. So here we go. I found them. So let's 5. Lovely. Okay. So let's go to the Bookoplathon board and see if I can do this without causing issues. So we'll start on the go. So 5 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is pumpkin carving. Do I know what that means? No, but don't worry. I have all the information here. What is pumpkin carving? Okay, read a book with a face on the cover. This can include covers with whole people on it, but just their faces and non-human faces. So when I rolled that, if you guys watched my full TBR, you will have seen that I picked a different book. And so I'm changing what I'm doing, of course, because hi. It really wouldn't be my channel if I didn't change things all the time. So the prompt was for a book that had a face on it, and it didn't have to be a human face. So I don't have my cover with me, but I decided to change it to Wisteria by Adeline Grace because the cover I have is the UK cover, so there's like a fox on it or a bunny or something, so like there's an animal face on it, but also like the US cover is a face, like a human face. So either way, I'm going to choose this one because I've already started it and I am over halfway through. So Wisteria is the 3rd and final book in the Belladonna series. I got the UK cover and I didn't realize it was going to have this beautiful, like, stunning underneath the dust jacket. Like, this isn't a special edition. This is just like a regular book I bought off like the UK Amazon to match my other books. So that's beside the point. Wisteria is the 3rd and final book in the Belladonna series, which I've read a couple of years ago and really loved. And then the second book is Foxglove, which I read last year, I think, and loved that one as well. It's a gothic-esque mystery series. Best way I can describe it. This one, however, takes a turn and does something very different. So in the first book, we have Signa, who's our main character, and she is very, very close with death. She has been kind of passed around from family to family. Her parents died when she was really young, and so they left her a lot of money, and so she's been passed around from guardian to guardian, and just stuff keeps happening to those guardians. So she is very close with death, like death is always around. And in this series, death is like an actual person. So like not like the Grim Reaper. I mean, yes, but like that's not really who he is. He's like a whole person. And in the first book, she gets sent to her cousin's house because it's like the last person, family-wise, that she can go to. I think she comes of age in the second book, or at least the end of the first book, somewhere in there. And I can't remember if she's 18 or 21, like what's considered coming of age. But I think it's 20 or 21, now that I'm thinking about it. Either way, she gets sent there, and he is mourning the loss of his wife who recently died, and his daughter, Blythe, is going through the same sickness, if you will. Well, one of the things that Signet can do is she can see ghosts, because again, she's very, very close and connected with death. Not like she's close with the person, because like they have animosity, but like death is just like always around. So because of that, she has some abilities, and one of those is to see ghosts. And she runs into the ghost of her cousin's wife, and she says, look, I was poisoned. I don't know who did it, but my daughter is going through the same thing, and so she's being poisoned, and you have to figure out who it is before she dies. And Signet's like, okay, fine. So we have that, and that's the first book, and that's like a situation its own. And then the second book starts with another murder mystery, and we are introduced to the character of Fate, which is very, very similar to the character of Death. They're brothers. And so in the second book, it's split between the perspective of Signet and Blythe. So Blythe becomes a much bigger role in the second book. And in the third book, I bring all that up because in the third book, we are, unless something happens in the last like 150 pages, we are primarily in Blythe's perspective. And it's her... I don't really want to say anything because it's the third and final book in the series, but we follow Blythe, and Fate plays a huge part in this book. So I have loved this series. Like the first two books, specifically the first one, has like that spooky gothic vibe because you've got Signet trying to figure out her powers and her ability to talk to ghosts, and then you've got like a murder mystery element. And then the second book is similar in its like murder mystery-ness of it because there is another murder mystery that she's solving. In that one, it's just different. And then, like I said, she and Blythe become closer, and like you get to see their friendship because they're cousins. And because of what happens at the very end of that book, Blythe takes the forefront of this one. So Signet's involved in the story, but Blythe's really the main character. And so while this one is much more of a fantastical hate to love situation, whereas the first one was more of a gothic murder mystery, I love these characters so much that like even though the vibe is different, I'm loving it. Like I literally started this, I think yesterday, possibly the day before. I might have read a couple of chapters the day before, but I really read it yesterday, and I'm already on page 262. So I don't have much left, and actually now that I'm looking at it, I stopped at a really big cliffhanger, so that was dumb of me. Either way, this is the book that I'm choosing for this prompt. I thought I'd come and kind of just start the vlog, but I'm also going to do a second roll while I'm here because we are going out of town this weekend. Not far. We're going to Chris's parents. He's doing a 5K with his dad, so we're going to hang out with his parents. And because of that, obviously, I think because of how I flew through this book, I don't think it's going to take much time for me to finish this one. So I want to have a second roll and a second book ready to go in case I finish this. So that's what we're doing here. So let me pull up everything I've got. What did we land on? I've already forgotten what I landed on last time. I landed on pumpkin carving. So let me pull up, because I'm doing it this way. Here's my two-sided die. Where is the roll? There it is. Up here. 4. Okay. Let me go back here. Pumpkin carving is here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Future. What is that prompt again? I can always never remember what the prompts stand for, but she's got a whole guide on everything. So I'm going to pull that up real quick. I think it's just like set in the future, if I'm correct. A book you've been saving for the future or for the right time, also known as a rainy day book. Okay, I have options. I have multiple options for this. Okay, so I have 3 options of books that are on my TBR that I want to get to. But to make it the spooky, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. I lied. I've narrowed it down to 2. So the 2 I have are The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile, which is a thriller, and then The Shadow Cabinet by Juno Dawson, which is a witchy, fantastical book. I always put the Juno Dawson book on TBRs and never get to it, but The Woman in the Library I have on my Kindle, and also the audiobook is due soon from my library. So I'm leaning towards that one because like They're both on my fall TBR, so my plan is to read it sometime in the fall, and I didn't think I was going to get to it this month, at least the Woman in the Library I didn't think I was going to get to this month. I rearranged my TBR to make that one fit a prompt, like for my personal TBR. So that's the one that's winning at the moment. So unless something happens and I change my mind at the last minute, like I did with Wisteria, which, let's be honest, is totally possible, I think I'm going to go with The Woman in the Library. I do have a physical copy. It's downstairs, but I have the ebook for my library, so I can read it on the go. So I'll just take my Kindle, and I won't have to worry about a physical book. So I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'll come back to you when I finish Wisteria and or started the next one and give you my thoughts. But this doesn't feel like a 5-star, but this feels like a 4-star, which I think the rest of the series has been. Maybe the first one was a 5, but the last one was definitely a 4. So I'm loving it so far. So we're at a new angle today. We're trying out something new, try to make the light work in this spot. Also, apologies for being kind of quiet, but baby is asleep. Literally have the monitor in front of me. So I'm trying to be kind of quiet for her, but I do have updates. So over the weekend, I finished Wisteria by Adeline Grace like I thought I would, and I gave it 4.5 stars. Solid conclusion. I stand by all my thoughts that I had previously. This is not as gothic as the other two, which is totally fine. This takes a little bit more of a romantasy twist. I guess romantasy is not the right word. I mean, it is romance and there are these fantastical elements, but it takes, definitely romance takes a front seat in this one, and it's not the couple that we have come to know, which is fine. It's definitely a hate to love, which I really appreciated, and it felt very gradual. It made sense. This story, like I've mentioned, follows Blythe, which is great. I actually really enjoyed following her. I liked having that middle book where we had both perspectives, so we got to know her a little bit more and realized how important she is to the story, so that when we went into this one and it was entirely in her perspective, well, not entirely, the guy has some chapters later on that are in his perspective, but it's her story, and Signa just is a part of it instead of the story being Signa's story. So I just really liked the way this series, like the story it took, it made sense. We followed these two characters, and what I liked about this is like there was some full circle moments at the end of this that brought back things from the first book, which I liked. Kind of had some closure there. I definitely cried like a child at the end of this, just because it has that element in it that makes me cry no matter what it is in every single book. Not every single book. If this element is in a book, I sob. Which was really glad that Chris didn't walk in, because I was literally holding Peanut. She was asleep on me. And I was finishing the audiobook in my ear, and I'm sobbing. So if someone walked in the room, it would look like I'm just holding my child crying. So I was really glad that no one walked in while I was finishing the book. But like, I like the way it ended. This is a very solid series for me. I feel like I'm going to remember a lot of elements about this. And I can also see myself rereading this in the future now that I have all three, and have read all three, and maybe like picking up on things. I don't know, maybe there are some like Easter eggs in the first book that come full circle in this one. I don't know, but I really liked this one, and it was my first prompt of Faces on the Cover. So book 1 done. And then I did a roll like you guys saw, and I picked The Woman in the Library. And I got, I'm honestly not sure what chapter I'm made it to. I am DNFing this book. I made it 35% of the way through according to my audiobook and my ebook. I'm not 100% sure what page I was on. This is great in theory. The execution is lacking for me. It has this like air of pretentiousness to it, like just the way it's written. I don't know how to explain it. It's from the perspective of a writer, so you know, there's kind of an air of I cannot say that word, pretentiousness to it because of that. But it sounded like it was going to be a mystery in a library, and it's not. It's these 4 people who meet in a library. They hear a scream. The bodyguard or the security guard checks around, says everything's fine, go home. So they all go home. They kind of like become friends a little bit. They go out to coffee afterwards. She's a writer. That's another guy that's a writer, and then there's a young girl and a young guy. So it's the 4 of them. And then they find out later on the news that a body was found, and the young guy ran in the same circles as her, but like that's really about it. And so our main character is kind of like writing this story. So in between the chapters are letters from this guy named Leo to someone named Hannah. And it is, I mean, I don't actually know, because like our main character in here is called Freddie. So that's not Hannah, but it's like he is commenting on the previous chapter as if he just received that chapter. And she's Australian, and our main character is Australian, and he's American and lives in Boston, and the story takes place in Boston. And so he's giving her like little hints, not hints, little edits here and there to make it more American, and like, hey, you said this word, which is totally fine for your main character because she's from Australia, but just so you know, in America it's this. So like your other characters wouldn't say that, or, you know, like little things like that. Hey, you mentioned this donut place. It actually is over here, so like that logically wouldn't work. You know, like little things like that. And so like little like nitpicky items that if you lived in Boston, you would know. But I was very confused because I don't know who the main character is. I don't know why this guy is writing, and like nothing is happening. I mean, yes, things are happening. It looks like our main character was getting stalked. The young guy was supposedly mugged, stabbed and mugged, and ended up in the hospital. But like, there was no intrigue for me. I couldn't care less about the characters. I just was trudging through this, and so I decided I'm just going to cut my losses and pick up something that I enjoy more. So unfortunately, we are going to DNF this, and I am going to unhaul it. I tried it, you know, like I give myself credit for trying it. So that's where we're at. So I finished a book and loved it, and I'm deciding to DNF a book, which is totally fine. But that means that we are in need of a new role. So I ended on future because the last prompt was like a book that you set aside for a rainy day. So let's pull up my die. I don't know if this is, I think this is where I left off. Either way, here's my die. Oh no, come back. All right, and 6. No doubles yet. That's exciting. Let me pull up my Bookopoly board. This is not working as planned. So sorry. 1 second. Here we go. I'm going to come to you. So I ended on future. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is bonfire. What on earth is bonfire? I'm moving the angle because this is a more comfortable position. Here we go. Read a book you are thinking of unhauling, or a book you are interested in but are not sure you will like. Okay, this kind of works. This kind of works. Does this work? I might be forcing something to work here. So this one may not work as well, but I'm gonna force it to work because I technically already started it. Once I figured I was gonna DNF the other one, I decided to just give this one a shot, which is One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I'm finally starting this book. So I'm saying this is a book with a topic that I'm scared of, or whatever that second part was, because it follows a girl with a monster in her head, which is not my thing in the slightest. Just started chapter 7, which is 70 pages in, so I'm not super far into the book, but I am enjoying it so far. And so like, it's not a book that I think I'm going to unhaul. But like I said, it follows this girl who has a monster in her head. Like, it takes place in this world where the magic system revolves around these cards, but there's also this illness that went around, and if you got the illness and you were infected, it meant usually that you had magical powers. And so our main character, Elsbeth, was infected when she was young, and so what's supposed to happen is when you're infected, you're supposed to tell the king, who is terrified of magic, and you are collected and taken to the dungeons. And so it's just created all this fear. And so her dad didn't do that. Instead, he sent her to her aunt and uncle's house, same village, just kind of in the woods, to recover. And everyone thinks that she has. And she did too, until her uncle found this card. There's like all these different cards, and they mean different things, and there's certain ones that are super rare. And the one that her uncle found was rare. There's only 2 in the world. And so she touched it, just kind of like, she was like super young, like 5, I'm thinking. And she touched it and didn't think twice about it. And then the next thing she knew, there was this thing in her head. And it's envisioned and looks a lot like this. It's this like, I don't know, like beast-like creature with yellow eyes. And so she's kept this information to herself. But, and it did say this on the dust jacket, she ends up creating this deal with a guy named, I believe it's this guy that she just met named Raven, who is connected to the king. And there's some other stuff about him. And I think they're going to go try to find all these cards. That part I don't know, but that's my theory. So I'm definitely interested so far, but the whole like weird in the head thing is kind of what makes me nervous. This is a duology. I had a credit from Audible and I have the first audiobook, so I got the second one ready to go because someone told me I was probably gonna want the second one right away, so I do have it ready to go if I need. So not super far into it, but I'm enjoying it so far. I'm definitely interested. It's definitely giving fantastical YA fantasy vibes, so I'm interested to see where we're gonna go. But I'm gonna choose this one. Am I stretching the prompt? Yes, but so what? Hi, you may hear baby noises in this clip. Someone's in the jumper and is having the time of her life, but I very much need to give you updates. So we're just gonna hope that you can hear me through this because it's well into November now, and I have not come to you to give you my thoughts on the final book. Well, the last book you saw me talk about, and then I read 2 more. So this is going to be a rather lengthy update. I do apologize. So the last time I came to you, I was reading One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I would say trigger warnings for familial abuse in this one. I really enjoyed this book, and I liked the world. It has a lot of YA tropes, a lot of YA fantasy things that you would expect to see, plot devices, things like that you would expect to see and have seen in a bunch of different YA fantasies. The magic system surrounding the cards was really interesting. That was the unique part of it, because it literally has like the lore in this book is that there's a shepherd king. That's what the series is called, the Shepherd King series. And he would go to like this Queen of the Woods, Witch of the Woods, I can't remember what they called her, but like she was the all-powerful person. And he would come to her and basically like ask for cards that would give the people in his life powers. And in order to do so, he would have to give her something. And like even at one point, one of the cards, the Nightmare card, which has the ability to like, you can communicate via minds, he had to give his soul for that. So even things like that, vanity, heart was one of them. Like there was just a few things that like he had to give up. And on the reverse side of that, because of that, if you have these cards and you're using these cards, if you use them for too long, something happens to you. For example, there's this card called the Maiden card, and the purpose of it is like basically vanity. It like makes you beautiful. It like fixes all of your imperfections. But if you are using it for too long, you start to lose your sense of self and like your heart, I guess, basically. Like you basically turn into like this really super rock hard, cold-hearted person. So like you're beautiful, but you're mean. And so it's things like that. And so in this world, there are multiple of each, and like the more rare it goes, like there are these like 12 of these cards, 5 of these cards, 2 of these cards, and then there is one that only has 1. And in order to, there's like this mist which is causing problems for the kingdom, and they infect people, and these infected people have powers. And so that's where the story starts. Is we have our main character Elsbeth, who was infected, and the power she has, we kind of learn throughout the book, but basically she has this monster, she calls him the Nightmare, in her head. She touched a nightmare card, which is one of the ones that like you can read minds. Something came out of the card and has been living in her head since she was like 7. So, or less than that. I honestly don't remember how old she was. So like that's her story. She's got this nightmare in her head. And then if you combine, if you get one of each of the decks, like one card, and you create a deck, then you can kind of like get rid of this infection and the mist and everything. And so that is the purpose of this book, is she ends up teaming up with one of the princes or cousins of the princes, both pretty much, and more people than that, to find this deck so they can save one of their own family members who's been infected and is basically degrading really, really quickly. So it's way more than that, but I loved this. I loved the story. It was very gothic. It wasn't, I wasn't expecting this to be like the next best, my new favorite book of all time. And while I enjoyed it a lot, that's not the vibe I had. So I think I went in with a little bit of high expectations, which is totally fine. But I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed it so much that I picked up the second one, Two Twisted Crowns, for another prompt. I did actually roll these previously, so let me show you what that prompt was. All right, we're going to do a spin very quickly, or sorry, a roll really quickly, because I don't have time to update, but I have time to get a new prompt. So, the roll 8, so let's go to the board. I answered on bonfire last time, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which is broomstick. So let's see what that's all about. Come on. Was that pink, red? Red. Cleanse your energy, a book with a simple or clean looking cover. So the second book, Two Twisted Crowns, I enjoyed. I think it was really good for me to read it right after. I was told that this one was going to end on a cliffhanger, so I was going to want the second one. And while yes, there was a cliffhanger, I think that it was not to the point of like I needed the second one, but I know myself, and there's only 2, and I thought, well, if I can make this fit for another prompt, let's see if I can. And the next roll worked with me, so I made it fit for another prompt, because if I had put any time between this one and the second one, I am discovering this habit I have where if I do not continue a series, unless it's something like one of my favorite authors, like Sarah J. Maas, that's different. But like usually if it's a new series for me and I do not continue it, the second book almost always suffers. There are exceptions to the rule, like the Belladonna series. I read all 3 books in that series like years apart, and every single one of them was great. So like it doesn't always work, but I just kind of know myself, and I know if I had put any time, then the second one would have suffered. I would have forgotten most of the magic system. I wouldn't have cared about the characters. So I picked up the second one. And I ended up giving that one 4.5 stars as well. What I liked about this one that was different than the other one, everything, all my thoughts about the first one, I would say are pretty similar to my thoughts about the second one. Really enjoyed it. It wasn't my new favorite book of all time, but I liked the magic system. I liked learning about the cards. I liked learning, this one kind of dives a little bit deeper into the history behind the cards and how they became cards. That was really interesting. But the thing that I found the most interesting is in the first book, we follow Elspeth. It's from her perspective. We do dive into a couple other people's perspectives, but it's mainly from her perspective. And it's her kind of getting close. I mean, it's a fantasy. It's a story about them trying to collect these cards, but there is romance on top of it. So it's her and this guy named Raven, who was a cousin of the princes, and he is the head of this world's like guard that is strictly, their task is finding infected people. Their romance takes center stage. It's not the main plot, but it's a pretty big plot in the first book. Their romance continues in the second book differently because of how the first book ends. But what I liked about the second book is that there's a cousin. He's actually one of the sons of the king. He's also on this quest, and the second book primarily follows more people. It follows his perspective. It follows Raven's perspective. It does follow Elspeth's perspective. It follows, actually, I think it's just those 3 now that I said it out loud. So the prince's name is El, and he takes the center stage. in this one, and his romance takes center stage in this one. So while yes, the romance of Raven and Elsbeth is part of the plot, the author introduces a new romance with the character, with Elm and another character. And I really liked it because it didn't take away from the plot. Like, just, it's hard to talk about because I don't want to spoil it, but like, because of stuff that happens at the end of the first book, there is a little bit of a pause in Elsbeth and Raven's story. So we're filling that hole with this romance, but it doesn't detract from the other romance. Like, it did, that's what the author is doing, but it didn't feel like that's what the author was doing, if that makes any sense. So obviously familial abuse trigger warnings for that in here too, specifically physically, because stuff has happened to Elm in his past, specifically with his brother, and that takes more of center stage in the second book. So it's mentioned in the first book because it's kind of like Elm's backstory, we learn about him, but he takes a bigger role in the second book, so that story takes a bigger role. So I was able to finish this duology. I'm so happy I did. It worked so well. It's very good, very gothic, takes place in a forest, has some mist and magical things, and even like the witch, who's supposed to be like the all-powerful person, is described in a very kind of creepy way. Like, she's not this like beautiful, ethereal kind of goddess that you would expect. She has like horns and has weird eyes and teeth, and like, I don't know, just like the way she's described is very creepy. So she it worked well for the Halloween fall season. So I definitely read this at the right time. I'm so glad I read these back to back. And then I had like a day and a half left, and I said, let me just roll one more time and see what I get. So I think I did it on my computer, so I'll pop it up here instead of having the iPad like I usually do, and I ended up giving Stabby, which is true crime thrillers or grim dark. And so I took this, it's very up to interpretation. I took this as like, includes, I mean, it is darker fantasy. Okay, the book that I chose for this was Queen Bee by Juno Dawson, which is the prequel novella in the HMRC series, and I ended up giving this one 3 stars, 3.5 stars. Trigger warnings for miscarriage, torture. There's possibly abuse. I don't remember. I have a question mark next to it because I like. It felt like there are moments that felt like there was abuse mentioned, but I also don't know if I was correct in thinking that. This switches back and forth between 2 women's perspectives, but takes place at the time of Anne Boleyn and King Henry's court. The book literally starts with Anne Boleyn's death. So like, I think the first sentence in it was like, the blade falls, and I was like, Stabby, there you go, knife. So that's how I connected it. It is dark. It has some very dark moments in it. But I felt like this story, while interesting and fun to have a sapphic twist on a part of history that I personally love, you have to know that part of history for some of the things in here to make sense. It just feels very boring if you don't know who Anne Boleyn is, why some of the things that she's doing. It is like, the author does kind of walk you through that part a little bit, so you have enough information if you are not well versed in that history. But I am fascinated by Tudor England. I don't know why, but I am. And so I have a lot of backstory and a lot of history, like historical knowledge of the time period, so I think that helped me. If you don't care about this time period, this book is probably just meh. I mean, it isn't my favorite thing in the world. I liked it enough. It was interesting because it basically is like Anne Boleyn started a coven, and that's what turns into the HMRC, Her Majesty's Royal Coven, in the first book. So this is like the backstory of how it came to be. But we follow Grace, who was in love. One of the women and ladies in waiting for Anne Boleyn. Actually, technically, I think she was the lady in waiting for Catherine, who was the queen before Anne, but became very close with Anne. It's a sapphic story between the two of them. And so you've got flashback moments where it's scenes between the two of them, but then you've also got the present time where Anne is dead, and it is clear that there was a traitor in the little circle of women, a coven of witches, and so they know who it is, and they're trying to get her. So Grace is really, really working to try to find this witch who has now run away. And so it's not like this grand sweeping story. It's got moments. You really see the story of Grace and kind of where she is. I like how it ends. It has this very kind of sweet ending, but it's not necessary. Like, it's a fine book if you are obsessed with the series. I was really hoping that this book would get me back into the vibe of HMRC, so I would just like need to pick up the next book, and it didn't do that. It actually kind of deterred me from picking up the next book. Not that I don't think I'm going to enjoy it, because this is nothing like the first book, but I felt like I was like, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna get back in the world. I'm gonna love this story, and I'm gonna need, like, it's gonna reignite the love of this, and I'm gonna start the next one. And it has really nothing to do with the series as a whole. It doesn't it doesn't really have any connection to the main series. It's just kind of like how things got started. So it was fine. I'm glad I read it. It was very short, which was great. It was a novella. I think the audiobook was a total of 3 hours. So like that was great. It was something I could squeeze in at the end of the month, and it was about witches, which felt perfect for Halloween. And now I'm kind of like in a fantasy, like I have been in a fantasy mood, but I'm definitely more in a fantasy mood now, but like not necessarily like these darker witchy stories. So I don't know. I'm definitely going to pick up the next one. I'm not saying that this has deterred me from picking it up, just maybe not quite yet. I want to give it my all, and I want to be in the right mood. So I'm sure it'll like hit at a random time, and then I'll pick it up. But it was just kind of okay. Like, I enjoyed it because it was a time period that I enjoyed, but if you don't care anything about Tudor England, it's probably not going to do anything for you. But those are the final books that I read for Spookoplathon. So looking at my list here, I finished 4 books and DNF'd 1, which, considering I only really did this for the past couple of weeks of the month, I'm going to count that as a win. And I got through some things that I've been wanting to get through for years. Like, not years, but like Wisteria was a really top priority for me. One Dark Window was a top priority, and I'm so glad I continue with that one. Queen Bee was maybe not a top priority, but I was really interested in that one, and it came out this year. So another book that came out in 2024 that I read, which is good because I'm really bad at reading books that come out this year. I didn't order it, so I'm actually glad I don't own it, because like I would not pick it back up. Like, it's fine, but like I don't need to continue. I don't need to reread it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed all of these. I think I gave every single one of them, minus the one I DNF'd. I gave 4-star, 4-star, 3-star, 4-star. So, a great end, I think, to the Spookoplathon. So, I'm so glad I participated. It was super random. I liked having this, like, kind of spin as you go thing, so I might bring that back in a future vlog, maybe with my own TBR. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we should do this again. I just kind of liked the kind of you know, the mood reading taking over. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very all over the place. I do apologize. I was not very good at vlogging this, and it's coming out clearly very late. But let me know how you did in October. If you participated in Spookoplathon, tell me how you did in that as well. Of course, if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please let me know all of your thoughts on that. Peanut is very excited as well. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you did, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe it down below if you'll be part of this awesome and growing family. I've also got all my social media down there, as well as other fun bookish links. So check all that out, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!